is awkward. My first question is always, what kind of art do you make?
From art, I do photography, right? And so I use a camera and take pictures of wildlife, cars, and then sometimes people.
Can you share a little bit of your background, like how you got into photography and where you are now?
Yeah. So my dad had always been in photography growing up. He actually had like old film cameras. And so like I was always going with him to the photo stores and, developing film and then seeing him like be, try to store that and like put it in all these albums. So like literally I have probably like 75 albums of my life growing up from my dad.
Wow.
And so he started it and then he really got into like sports photography. So when I graduated high school, he got into sports photography. So he's always been around cameras. I've always been around it. And then as I got older, he got older. That's kind of like what we bonded over because we'd get in fights every now and then. And
Yeah.
so we bonded over the photography stuff. And then it really took off when my uncle passed away. I got all of my uncle was also in photography, my dad's brother.
Oh,
And so
wow.
like I literally got like lenses and a camera from my uncle. And so then that really like is where I started really diving into it deep. And then my dad and I did a lot of shared trips because I when I moved out west, it was like an opportunity for us to like bond and go do trips. And so like we did trips to national parks and all that stuff and like bonded over photography. So
Very cool. Do you still use the cameras that you've inherited, or do you have your own that you've bought?
I use mostly what all of my lenses are the ones I use that are inherited, but I ended up recently upgrading to like a much better camera last year in like the last no actually this year in like the last 8 months. So like I used that camera for maybe 5 years and then only recently did I upgrade to like a little bit better of a camera. But I have it as a backup. And I still use all the lenses because they fit on the new camera. So
Cool. Do you have a favorite lens?
um well, I lied. Actually, I did get a new lens with a new camera, but there's two favorite lenses. So 70 to 200, it's like it has a good range. And then I also have a new 100 to 400. And so like I absolutely love that lens because I do more wildlife, like I said, or landscapes. And like with the telephoto lenses, I can get a lot closer. And so like I've learned that instead of using a lens that's really wide angle, I use a lens that's very like, telephoto and gets me very close. And then I just take multiple images and I stitch it together. So it's like a crisper, clearer image, but I'm like on top of the mountain versus like miles away from the mountain.
Gotcha. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a strategy for blending into the environment, or is that not something that you have to do when taking of animals?
So like wildlife, yes. I have not gone as far as like I've seen people and I've definitely been tempted to do this, but like put up like shades and like sit behind it and watch birds. Like fortunately in Utah, it's like a cheat code. There's
Oh,
animals and wildlife everywhere. And so like
okay.
for example, some of like my favorite eagle shots or moose shots, it's at like literally a lake with a boardwalk that we walk at night. And so they just are there. And so I can get
Okay.
like right on top of them. And so I've never really had to like hide. Um, one of them, which was one of the more memorable, but probably a little edgy on how I did it. But like I went with a dog hunter. They do hunting and they use dogs and they hunt mountain lions and bears. And typically they have a hunter. Well,
Wow.
this one time they were going out to train the dogs and they didn't have a hunter. And like, I saw him post on Facebook, like, hey, does any photographer want to come with me? We're not killing, but like, we're going to train the dogs. And I was like, absolutely. Like, and so we went and like hiked all over this mountainside and found like a mountain lion. And like, I was probably 10 feet from this mountain lion with
Oh,
dogs.
wow.
So like, I didn't have to hide behind anything, but like the dogs made me feel comfortable. But yeah, anyways, not
That's,
a fan of the hunting, but it was really cool to get that close and not be scared.
is that the closest you've ever gotten? I guess a mountain lion is pretty scary, but
It was a big female mountain lion. She was pretty
wow.
terrifying. And like, I mean, I have pictures of it. She was like showing her teeth and everything. Moose, I always try to maintain good distance, to be honest, like usually 75, 100, 150 yards, typically like from actual ones. Moose are very scary. Um, Usually
Very
those I
cute.
end up coming up on them. Yeah, they're huge and they're fast. And so, anyway, so like I know techniques that like if they run at you, you hide behind a tree and like how that stuff like different items and kind of protection of myself work, but I usually don't try to like scare them or get too close, which is where I like the telephoto lenses because I can get a shot as if I'm like right on top of them without having to be on top of them.
Okay,
So
because
that's
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 like
usually like my method.
gotcha. That's helpful.
Or
Okay.
driving in the mountains, like we do the same thing. Like I'll drive and I'll see a moose and I'll pull over and I'll shoot out the side of my window in my car. So it's like I'm still protected.
Okay. You are very safety cautious there.
Yeah, pretty
Um,
scary.
would you say there's like an unpredictability about how you take photographs in nature? Like, I feel like I'm more leaning to the nature thing, not the cars, unfortunately, but
That's fine. Yeah, cars are, I mean, there's no unpredictability, right? But I'd say the nature thing, it's totally unpredictable, right? Because you got to know when are they like a lot, it's predictable but unpredictable. And so like people will go out in the middle of the day and they'll try to shoot animals and they're like, I didn't see any. And it's like, we got to think, right? Humans eat in the morning and eat at night. So like that is when animals are also most active, is in the morning when they're looking for breakfast and at night when they're looking for dinner. And so the unpredictability is now what hour are they eating breakfast and what hour are they eating dinner. So there's oftentimes where I'll go out at dinner and I don't see anything, or I'll go out at early morning sunrise because the other thing too is you want the light to hit right. So it's like not only do you want to see the animal, but you need the certain lighting conditions. Usually sunrise and sunset are the best times to shoot.
golden hour, yeah.
Um, yeah, golden hour, exactly, blue hour. And so it's like I like getting that effect because then you get different shadows and stuff. And I think it's challenging because then you're like, okay, where are the animals at? And like there's a lot of times I'll go out and I'm like, Sarah, I didn't see anything. Or I bring her with me and of course I see more. And it's just like, come on, girl. You are definitely good luck, but like I can't bring you every time. They need to be out for me. So yeah, there's that. And then also like weather, right? Like if it's really rainy, like when I did the mountain lion, like it was snow on the ground, which helped us track the mountain lion because we could see where the mountain lion walked with the paw prints. So it helps, but then it also hurts because now we're hiking through the snow with camera gear and backpacks and very uneven terrain. So I'd say that's probably the unpredictability. And then you also have like the level of did you forget certain lenses? Like there's been times where, I have like maybe say 5 to 10 lenses and like I go out and it's like, oh, well, I didn't bring that lens for this situation. So I've started perfecting like what are my favorite lenses, and that's really the two I mentioned. But yeah, sometimes you don't have what you need for the job, or you forget your memory card, or you forget a battery, and you're like, oh, can't do
And
anything
just
this
like
time.
adapt to it.
Yeah, and a lot of times like where you need a tripod or not, right? And so like I shoot manual, so it's like I can control every aspect of the photo. Like, do I want a fast shutter speed? Do I want more light, less light? Like I use some of that to my advantage as well when I'm shooting.
Okay, you kind of already answered, but I'm gonna
Oh,
ask if there's any more that
sure.
comes to mind. No, it's great. Do you have you developed any techniques over time, like you have mentioned just now, but are there any other technique things that have come to mind?
Yeah, like some of it's learning your camera settings. I have a lot to learn here, right? And so like in cameras, like especially digital cameras, there's a lot of just like settings and on the fly and autofocus versus not autofocus. And like, for example, like when you're shooting birds, the autofocus and how you're shooting is much different than if I'm shooting a moose because a moose isn't going to move as fast. Where a bird, I'm literally flying and I'm having to track it in the air and get it in focus. And so like you have to kind of adapt and like learn how to change your camera settings for those different animals. And like I might see a moose 1 minute and a bird the next minute. It's like I have to flip and change. And how do you do that? I shoot actually that is one other thing in the camera is there's a thing called bracketing I do where it's like if I take 3 photos, it'll automatically change like a certain either shutter speed or
Oh,
aperture or ISO. And so it's like I'll do that sometimes so that I get like as I'm taking the pictures, it's automatically doing it for me. So I'm not having to change the settings on the fly. And I kind of get 3 different pictures of the same object or same bird or something that's at different settings. And then I can kind of choose which one's the best, right? So it's like it kind of does it for me, which is kind of nice. But back to the settings.
you said you originally started photography like as a way to like connect with your dad, but now like with where you're at, do you think you have an audience with it, or is it more so just family and friends still?
It's kind of a mix of both. Like I'd say in my old job, I had a lot more time doing it where I spent more time sharing online and more of like a following where now it's like I'd say it's more of like my closer friends. And I've actually built relationships with people on Instagram and I've like that's how I've met a lot of people here in Utah actually is like, hey, you do photo work, hey, you like to hike, hey, you like animals, okay, let's go. Right. And so like that's how I've made a lot of connections here. And so like I stay close with some of those folks here in Utah. Um, and even just some like I have some international following and stuff. So like it's not like, I think I have 1,000 followers on Instagram, so it's not like huge, but like I'm also not going for like I don't want 500,000 followers. Like that's not me. I just want like people that I can connect with and that I enjoy their artwork. And I follow some people just for friendship. I follow some people a lot really for photos. And like I'd say a majority of the people I follow are around photos. And like usually it's different mediums or different content like macro photography or other ones, like things that I haven't explored that like interest me. So that
Mm,
over time, if I can grow into those sections, right? And I mean, my dad did a lot of sports photography where I do more of like nature, landscape, cars, people. So it's a little bit different than what he did because I don't sports is fun, but it's not like his hobby was high school photography. So I don't have a high school to go do that with, and it's
yeah.
not really my passion. So yeah, I more connect with like-minded and then also like a little bit different in the same space that I can like more learn from. And as they post, I'm like, hey, how'd you do that? Or, where'd you go like find this cool place? Like, can I learn and can you show me kind of thing? So
Very cool.
um yeah, kind of a little bit of mix, but it's not like a huge audience or following, so to speak.
Gotcha. Okay. What do you enjoy most about photography? It can be anything.
I think one, I do like my work is a lot of Excel and number based.
Mm,
And so I really like that photography is not that at all. And it kind of forces me to learn more of the art, the creative side, and like pause and reflect. Where like at work, I'm always like, go, go, go. But like photography, it's like, what is the best composure of this, right? Like, I mean, it's not just, oh, I found a moose. It's like, how do I see this moose and how do I compose it so that it looks like a good picture and it's like a complete, well balanced picture? I really enjoy like the art of that.
mhm.
I also like that it gets me outside because naturally everything I like to photograph is outside. And so it gets me outside, gets me into the sun, gets me exploring. And I think it pushes my boundaries a little bit to say, like, I want to go on this hike or I want to go see this. And I'm not a social person. Sarah obviously is very social. I am not so social. And so, like, the photography helps me bridge that and be more social holistically, whether that's finding people at car shows or hiking or wildlife, right? So, that is kind of my outlet to be social. Otherwise, I would definitely be very introverted, and I still am, but that's what I think I like most of it.
How would you describe like the way you shoot nature versus like cars? Like, is there like a mental state that's different, or is there like any kind of differences with your approach to that?
Mhm. I think wildlife, the mental state is more on like I'm like I feel like I'm on like a mission. And I'm like searching and like where can I find these animals? Or like I try to think more like an animal. I'm like, oh, there's a walking path here. Oh, there's water here. Or oh, there might be like in the desert, you're gonna not really find animals, right? You might find some rodents, but there's not a lot of food and greenery and stuff. So it's like you have to kind of think a little bit like them, and depending on the kind of animal, right? Like bighorn sheep might be more in a rock than like a moose, which is in more of a mountain. And if there's snow in the high mountains, the mooses are probably lower. So it's more about like composure and like where they are and what the background is. Where like cars, I don't know, it's usually still at a car show. Um, Sometimes what we'll do is we'll do like driving car shoots, and that's what I like the most because like I'm sitting in the back of a truck, somebody's driving me, and I'm like shooting a moving car, which gets you more into that composure and like how do you get a car like with a mountain road and a curve in it while it's moving while the car is in focus, which is very similar to like the bird photography that I like. And so
Mhm.
I like that best. But I ultimately end up doing a lot of stills because to see the variety of cars, they're at car shows. Usually, I don't have the connections with people with just massive car garages. So I definitely I prefer wildlife over cars, but I'm getting into cars more just because I'm in the automotive space work wise, so I enjoy cars
Yeah.
as a whole.
Because I've seen, is there like, what was it that I saw? There was like a group of people at a shoot for Rivian, I think.
Yeah, so there was like we do like there's a Utah Rivian Club, and then like when like actual which is not related to Rivian at all. It's like a Utah-based Rivian owner club that I'm a part of. And then if it was out on the Salt Flats, which I think was the most recent one,
Yeah.
basically Rivian was doing a road trip and they stopped in Utah and they connected with the Utah Rivian Club. And so said, hey, we're gonna do a meetup for like ice cream popsicles and like just hanging out on the Salt Flats. And so we went out there and that that's like my way of socializing because it's like I'm making connections with people in Utah while still kind of doing what I love.
Yeah,
So
like in the comfort zone still.
exactly. Yeah. So, and it's cool. Like some of those people do photography. Most of them just love their Rivian and love meeting other owners that have Rivians. So it kind of blends the two.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. I know one thing that they will all talk about, right? And so, yeah, it's definitely that comfort bubble and zone for me.
Okay. Do you have a favorite animal that you like photographing?
One that I've always really tried to photograph that I've never gotten, and I think I probably got this from my dad because he always wanted to and never did, where was an eagle.
Mm,
And so like I tried for a lot of years just to get good eagles and I never got it until literally like maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I got one at that boardwalk and it was flying over and hunting and like I'd say that's one of my favorite just because it's hard. Birds are hard to get in focus, to get crisp. They're very unpredictable. They move all over. But I really like an eagle because it's more of the challenge of finding one and then finding one that's like flying close enough that the light is right and everything. Um, I'd say an eagle is probably my favorite. My second favorite is more of like probably a coyote or a moose. I just both of them look beautiful in photos. So
Um, okay. This is like a multi-part question. Do you have, besides the eagle, is there any other like dream animal that you want to photograph?
well, that's a good question. I have never really done bears,
Mm,
and I really want to go to Alaska and do like grizzly bears eating like salmon or even a polar bear. One of those two, like a bit more in the bear family. I haven't done a lot there.
okay.
Um, so that would be really cool.
You're like, keep going to my next question, which is so funny. Do you have a dream
It means they
place?
naturally flow.
A natural or a dream place that you want to go to photograph?
Like I think Alaska would be really cool just from the bears, and I know I follow a lot of photographers that do that, and it's amazing there. Um, I also feel like I think it's Iceland. Um, is it Iceland or is it? I don't know. It's somewhere over there with like these ice caves that are really cool that you can like climb up in and like they're beautiful. And I think it's Iceland, maybe it's Alaska. I don't know. I'll come back, but probably Alaska is probably my number one. Um, I also kind of want to do Switzerland because some of like the Alps and like the picture of like a cow with like the Alps in the background, and the bell, like
Yeah.
that has always like been an image in my head that like I want to try to recreate in my own spin. So yeah, I'd say those two.
Are there any elements that you try to like incorporate in all of your nature photography, like either of nature elements or just like artistic elements?
That's a really great question. I personally really like getting the eyes very crisp. So like whether it's the eagle, whether it's the moose, whether it's the coyote, like to me, like the crisp image is having a crisp face. Now that's more in like technique and how do you get it and how do you make sure you focus correctly. But I'd say that's something I try to go for just because I feel like the eyes really tell the emotion, right? And whether they're like hunting, whether they're not, whatever they're doing, like that eye kind of tells me, like, makes me feel like a human connection with the animal, I should say.
Yeah.
In terms of like composure and stuff, I usually don't, and sometimes I do, depending on the size of the animal. I don't always take a full photo of the full animal. Sometimes it's like cropped of just like the upper, like moose. A lot of it, mine are just like shoulders to head, so it's like more intimate with the animal. So you can see more detail. But it depends on how close I am to that animal and how the lighting is, right? If it's good, if it's not, if it's crisp, if it's not. So
Gotcha. Do you have a favorite photograph? It could be of anything that you've taken.
I have a lot. I was trying to go through and choose 10 and it was very challenging. I'd say like top of mind, like the mountain lion is definitely one of mine just because this isn't one of my like photos I chose to send you, but it's like
Okay.
it has like a rock and then you can see the eyes, you see the emotion, and then you can see the teeth and you can see like literally the hairs on its tongue.
Oh,
And
wow.
like I absolutely love that photo. And then there's one other photo of like a Rivian that I took in southern Utah and like probably one of the most gorgeous sunsets I've ever seen in Utah. And that's probably my second favorite. So hard though. I have so many, and it's so actually, yeah. There's another favorite one I just saw that I didn't mention. It's a buffalo in the snow. It's one of my top favorites too. And that is in one of the ones I'm going to send you.
Can you remember like the most challenging photograph you've taken?
I'd say actually probably one of the most like technically challenging ones that I took is another one that I'm going to send you. It's of the Milky Way. So
Oh,
it's not wildlife, but it's Milky Way. And I actually took a Photoshop class for this with like a local photography store. They do local like learning classes.
very cool.
And so part of the photo is that you take a blue light photo of the mountain range so that it's lit up and it looks good. And then as it gets darker, then you start to take the sky so you can see the Milky Way. And so I did that, and then you basically compose them and you layer them together so that you have the foreground at the blue
Yeah.
light and the Milky Way at the dark. But while I was taking the Milky Way at the dark, I believe it was, somebody actually walked into my frame. And then while my camera was open, so it was open for like 5 seconds, this person walked in and was like, oops, I'm so sorry. I was like, it's okay, fine. And I looked at the photo and it's literally like they're a ghost on the left side and they're perfectly framed, like looking at the Milky Way with the foreground. So like I'd say that's like probably one of the most technically, but just like happened to happen. Like it wasn't a challenge to take it, but putting it all together and everything, and obviously having the aperture and the timing and the everything open at once while they walked into it was probably one of my harder ones. Some of the other ones are more on like Yellowstone is only open via bus traffic in the winter, so you have to like get a tour. In the one that I shot of the the bison in the snow, like I had to shoot outside of a bus window in the winter. You can only get there. You can't drive in Yellowstone in the winter, so that's another one. And then the mountain lion was pretty hard. Like we probably hiked not a trail, but like literally on the side of cliffs, like 2 miles to chase this mountain. And I probably had like 40 pounds in my pack. And then on the way back, we had to pull the dogs, and we had 8 dogs with us, and
Oh,
there's only two
geez.
of us. So we each had 4 dogs with a massive pack that we had to like pull them away from this mountain lion and put them on leashes to get them back to the truck. So like physically, that was probably the hardest. But yeah, it was also one of the most rewarding and fun.
Besides like your dad and your uncle, do you have other inspirations?
Like Ansel Adams is definitely, and that's probably like worn off for me from my dad, but he's like an artist that really focused on black and white photos. He did a lot in the Tetons and Jackson Hole area, Yellowstone area. And so like from a landscape perspective, I feel like that kind of influenced me. From wildlife, I'd say it's more like Instagram influencers, to be honest, like that do wildlife in like the Yellowstone ecosystem. So like they live right outside the park. They go shoot wolves and bison and everything up there all the time. And so like I'd say I'm more influenced by them, just like seeing a plethora. And Instagram's like bad, but I mean it's good, but it's bad, right? But I mean there's so much you can see on there and so much you can take inspiration from like angles to shots to like and I like a lot of my favorite photographers on Instagram will actually like post like the settings that they shot with so that then
Ooh.
I can interpret that and I shoot manual. I don't shoot in auto settings. Like everything I shoot is manual. So it's like I'm constantly changing on the fly based on how quick is the animal moving? How quick am I moving? And so like having another reference point is super helpful just to like learn and absorb that. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's any like famous wildlife ones though. They're all just
Okay.
like influencers or like art shops. I'll see it, right? And I take inspiration. I love going to like print shops or like little small, even like what do they call like farmers markets almost, but like they don't sell fruit, they sell, goods. And so there's a lot of photographers that go there that have stuff printed that I take inspiration from because looking at stuff on your phone is one thing and Instagram is one thing, but then having it printed, it's totally different and totally more real. And I love seeing my photos printed, but yeah.
Do you have any printed, like displayed in your house?
So I have, which actually I should probably put that on there too, but I have a moose. I have the buffalo in the snow in our bedroom, have it in my office. I have some of the Tetons. I have the Milky Way one I was talking about with like the man printed as well. And then, yeah, I have 8 of mine printed in my office. And then I also love supporting other photographers. So, like the one guy I mentioned that goes to Alaska, he lives in the Tetons in the summer. And he had one of these two moose in front of like the Grand Tetons. And I bought that off of him. Or a local photographer did these really cool ice ones. And I bought that off of him. So it's like, I also enjoy supporting the local artists.
Is there any other things that you want to share that I didn't touch on for like your creativity, hobby, whatever you can talk about anything if I didn't get to it.
I'd say you asked really good questions because they all like kind of fit into the theme. I'd say like a part of it that like also matters for wildlife is really like location. Like I said, Utah's kind of a cheat code because we have a lot of like wildlife, but like in Ohio, we don't have the wildlife that we have here in Utah. So it's like I only get birds. And so that's something that like I definitely take for granted, but also acknowledge that like I'm in a place where you have such a diverse wildlife. When we were in California, right, we were there for 11 months and like I didn't even really pick up my camera that much because I just one wasn't motivated. So there is ebb and flows of this.
Hmm.
But it seems that when I'm in Utah, I'm definitely most on the flow of wildlife photos and enjoying it and having the time to go out and do it. But it really matters like season and place where you live, depending on the animals you can shoot. So um, yeah, Utah's definitely a cheat code for anything
Which,
landscape.
yeah, because I'll see there's just so many different places that you can go, like the Salt Flats, or there's like all your hiking, like just seeing all your stuff. And like it's such a diverse
Yes.
ecosystem.
And I mean, down south, it's desert. Up north, it's mountains, right? And then
Yeah.
the salt flats. So it's like you literally have so many different, ecosystems of animals and plants and life, and which all brings different animals, right? And I think the other thing with Utah that I love is that it's a massive migration spot for bald eagles specifically. So like in February and March, like early February, late February, a ton of eagles pass through here. So naturally they're everywhere,
Mhm.
which is really cool too. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
and it's different shooting in different seasons, which I love. Utah, you can literally shoot year round here for different wildlife, um, and presents different challenges and landscapes and all that. So I'd say that's pretty much everything. The one thing I don't do, which I think, I mean, I need to get more into is video. So I do a lot of stills. Video, I think, is very intimidating to me
Why?
because of the size of the files. Like when you take a video, it's a huge size, but also like I don't have all the equipment to keep it still. My hands are really shaky, right? I've tried video on my new camera that I got, and it's like, I don't know, it looks like a 2 year old holding a
You're just
phone
like
trying to
shit.
take a video. Yeah. So it's intimidating, right? But I think that is some area that I really want to learn and grow into just so that, I can take videos of the animals to see the real movements because everything I have, right, is really still based, which is cool and I enjoy. And I think that I enjoy more of like a picture because you're capturing a moment in time that may never be repeated.
Yeah.
But I also love the connection you get with videos. But I haven't really explored too much there.
Maybe that's
Uh,
homework.
yeah, exactly.
How can people find you to keep up with your work? So just like any links, websites, social media handles, and all of that.
I have a website
I
back when I
looked
was
at
very passionate,
it.
where I was very passionate, where I built, I was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to sell it. And like, I sold some things, but like, I haven't kept it up and I need to get back into it. I just haven't had a time. So it's like, yeah. Anyways, my Instagram is the most current. Unfortunately, I don't have a cool name, but it's the
I
most
mean,
current.
it's your name. That's cool enough.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I appreciate it. Did get a tattoo recently of my dad, like for my dad.
Okay.
So I literally just got it this week, but it's a camera and then it's got his birth date over here. So
Because he passed,
yeah,
right?
he just passed. Yeah, in December. So it's like, that's to honor
Grateful.
him and then like our connection. And so, yeah, it
Yeah,
kind of ties it all together.
that's really sweet. Okay, well,
I'll
thank
send those
you.
over.
Yes, thank you again for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. And I loved learning about, I didn't know these things that your dad was into it. So that's really cool.
So
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. I'll send
Yeah,
it
of
over
course.
and thanks for doing this. This was fun.